Welcome back to the Driven Leadership Podcast, everybody. Man, we're on episode 31. We are now, I think, officially in the top 1% of podcasts who make it past episode 20.
Is that right?
Yeah, that is a true stat because there's so many, but I think it's just because so many people start podcasts that they drop off.
It's like working out at the first of the year. You got 6 weeks and then
we made it
again.
We made it through the January hard point, and yeah, we're still going. So despite skipping a week, but nobody said anything about that, and we're not going to talk about it in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
This week, Eric and I are having a conversation around EOS, as the title implied, and it's really interesting when we're talking about EOS. We either talk to people who absolutely know what it is and understand the concept of it, or they've never heard about it at all. And so the reason that we're talking about it on our podcast is that Eric just got certified to be an EOS implementer. And so we wanted a space to really hash out what EOS is and how it relates to the other things that we're doing within Driven Leadership. So we want to kind of tie those gaps together. We had our episode about university athletics, which is a big part of our business. We've talked about BOLD, which is another big part, and EOS is quickly becoming another big part of our business. So that's the kind of framework that we're working with this episode. So it's all about EOS. So Eric, based on your extensive knowledge of EOS, where do you think we should start?
I'd like to give a little bit of why we stepped into this, and it's been, Driven's, I think it's March is our birthday. So I think Driven crosses 16 years here in this year. And what we've considered, Mary and I put this thing together, and I tell the story a lot of times when we're at BOLD, is that, she and I are walking on this beach, and I'm like, what do you want to do? We're at this transition point in our life. We'd done training, really cool trainings that we'd been a part of. And she's like, I want to change the world. And if you know Mary, it's okay.
Yeah.
How you want to do that? And she's just like, I want to light people on fire and have them go. And that's Mary, she just wants to see people living their best version of their life. Yeah. And I love that about her. And I love the outcome of that, the process, the personal development side of helping people break through their walls is it is the coolest thing you've ever seen. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
However, she gets excited about that. I get excited about the exact same thing, but in business.
Yeah.
I want to see this group of people that are put there for a purpose. And in most cases, yes, it is to produce a profit, but it's more than that. It's to produce a culture of winning, of going out there, and whether it's crushing records, whether it's helping people, whatever this design of this corporation is there for, and this group of people are brought together, I want to see that lit on fire. I want to see them be able to put it together. So hers gets much more in the individual. Mine gets much more into the team and producing a result as a team. Yeah. And so for 15 years, this is our 16th, for 15 years, we would grow people, and I would grow the teams and go in and work with them. And there was always this question mark as to whether or not the leadership team or the leader in general knew how to take these people that are going at it and this group of people that have great connectivity and all these things and have a system that goes with it, that you can take all this energy and move the business forward. It still came down to, does the CEO or that C-suite area, do they know how? Are they the leader that has the organizational structure?
Yeah.
And what we consistently run into, especially where we live, which is usually about 500 employees or less, meaning it's a team of 500 or less or a business of 500 or less, is that you don't have people that are trained in how to do that. They didn't go to school for it. They've usually grown up in this business and created something phenomenal, but they don't really know how to lead. They don't really know how to create the structure.
Yeah.
And so what we started noticing a few years ago was we kept running across companies that were doing EOS. So EOS, for those that don't know, is Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's built on the back of a number of things. I mean, I think the core level of this is something called the Eisenhower principles, which are some core business and management principles that Dwight Eisenhower used to, I guess he was the guru of that. And he put those together. And there's several companies that have come out with different operating systems for business. And EOS really seems, and I stay consistent with this, has it together better than any of the others. There's just, it's just an amazing system they put together. So it's built over the top of a book called Traction. So Traction is by a gentleman named Gino Wickman. Gino's background, he was an entrepreneur at heart at a young age. And actually in his 20s, he went into to basically dig his family business out of the situation they were in. And in just a few years, he got a whole new leadership team in there. And he basically turned his life into, how do I help businesses do that? How do I help them get unstuck? Because so many businesses, they get in there and we're growing, we're working, we're pushing, and every single business works hard, and then they hit a ceiling and they get stuck, and then they go and they cycle back through, and usually they stay stuck until they either learn the lesson or gain the skills or gain the people that are going to help them get through it. Mm-hmm. Most of them don't. They'll stay stuck for years and years and years, just thinking, oh, it's the economy, or oh, it's this, or oh, it's that. And the reality is, it's how they're leading, it's the systems they put together. Yeah. And so we started noticing this, and we go, okay, we started looking at EOS implementers to partner with. So the way EOS works is you can self-implement. So you can read the books and you can go, I'm going to take this on myself, which I strongly encourage. I mean, go after it. Yeah. It's really hard to do. And the only reason it's really hard to do is there's a whole lot of details. If you do them slightly off, then you don't get the same result. And then when you don't get the same result, you get frustrated with the system, and it's your ability to work through it. Yeah. And there's a lot of situations where you're sitting with your leadership team and you've got to push them in a different way of thinking, because EOS is usually a different way of thinking. And you're part of that thinking. So it's a hard thing to not have a different perspective. So, but there are people that self-implement, get great results from it, working from the book. There's great resources online. An implementer is for those that want to get committed to doing it in a way that is basically more efficient. You don't have the learning curve, and you've got an outside context that's helping you not only go through the process, but they're helping you facilitate those tough conversations, because there are tough conversations and getting any business to move and kind of break through the system.
Third party is super valuable in those types of conversations, to just be able to remove some of the emotion out of it. Because that always happens when you're going through the processes that EOS makes you go through. It can get pretty intense. So I imagine having that third party is a huge benefit.
Yeah. So it's, yes. And I encourage people to go after the self-implementation. And then when they get stuck, call an implementer, call them in and then kind of walk you through where we're at and how to help and move forward. But the overall context is for driven leadership. And I know we're going to do another one on our Align program and get into it. But what we formed out of it was doing EOS the way EOS is intended to be done. I mean, it is a standalone thing that we do internally within driven leadership. But what we have with Driven is we also have all the leadership development, the management skill, our summit programs that are developing manager skill sets. We have the individual leadership and personal growth side of getting into the behavior of leaders and how do they create influence and all those type of things. And now we have this third bucket, which is the structure, the alignment, the systems to help move forward. And so I guess
you mentioned a couple of times that, like, whenever in the past we've worked with companies, we've done the personal leadership development, they've gone through Bold, but you were saying that there's a difference in the companies that have EOS to back it up with. What was that difference in those companies that were running EOS versus not running EOS or didn't have the systems to support it?
Great question. So if you imagine, let's imagine we got a race car. Companies are a race car, right? So when we're developing people, what we're doing is we're putting on better tires, we're putting better fuel in the tank, we're upgrading equipment all around the thing. This thing can go faster, it can go harder. EOS is the actual racetrack, and so you get into, we're going to go take the race car out, and then people take a race car on a dirt road. It's bumpy. It's not clear. There's not a clear vision. We don't have clear data. We don't even know if we got the right people. We don't know what our core values are. We don't, and it's bumpy and people feel it. it starts to grow and you're like, wow, we're doing something cool. It starts to grow. And it's like, why are we hemorrhaging money everywhere? Why are people quitting? Why is it so frustrating to grow this? Why can't I sleep at night? You know, and it gets down to, there are an EOS, and I guess we'll go into it, probably not now, but we'll go into the 6 components of EOS and kind of what that is. But EOS is the road, is the way I look at it. And you got this car on the road. If you're good at tuning your car and making sure, you're developing your people and you're upgrading everything that's going on, and you're good at making sure the pathway is clear, we know where we're going, it's smoothed out. When there are bumps, we've got systems and solutions and process to help us through, a meeting cadence that really works, all these type of things.
Yeah.
Well, then it's real hard to, sure, I'll stick with the analogy. You could have a tornado that happens to hit the road in your car. It is possible.
Yeah.
But minus any catastrophic events or outside influence, you just got to keep tuning the car. You got to keep putting gas in the car. You got to make sure your driver, can see well and is clear, and you're having the meetings and connecting all those things together to make sure your pit crew is on point, and whatever you want to call it. This analogy really works. I'm sticking with it.
No.
So, but you look at that and you go, there are teams out there that don't even meet with their leadership team. Some don't meet but once a year. Some don't even meet once a year, especially some of the smaller companies.
Yeah.
And if you were to go back to the race car analogy, you're the driver, you own this business, and you don't meet with your pit crew. You don't even pull in to the pit stop. You just keep driving, and you're like, God, I wonder why the tires aren't working. I wonder why the pit crew keeps quitting.
We all know the famous example of what happens when you do that. Lightning McQueen really showcased what happens when you don't listen to your pit crew.
Pixar has nailed it. So,
you've heard it here first. Cars is an analogy of why EOS works in your business.
Well, we take this analogy further. A name of our company is Driven Leadership, and the book Gino wrote is Traction. We've nailed it. We got it all together.
So good.
But the in and outs of it are, when we go into companies and you go, why does this help? Is because it's for all those companies that really struggle with that road part, what we're talking about. And we can get into what the details of that look like, but there's a component of making sure we're driving on something that works. And then when we've got the right people in place, are we developing those people to really make sure that they're growing with the business? Because as the business grows, the people in the business have to grow with it. We got to keep developing them as well. And then us as a leader, if you own a business and you're not developing yourself first, and I know that sounds, people are like, well, I need my team to produce. You want your team to produce, you go grow, because it creates a vacuum. And I love Maxwell's law of the lid. It's like, we grow you, everybody else has to step into that vacuum. What people do is they go, I want to grow the people down below me. And then it all kind of squishes, and then they get frustrated because you're not advancing. So anyway, there's a whole lot to it.
Yeah. I love whenever we first started talking about that, because just to a peek behind the curtain for Driven, we really feel like the EOS piece combined with all of the other products that we've been doing. Obviously, I haven't been with the company for the last 15 years, but everything else that we've been doing for the last 15 years, EOS was that missing kind of piece to bring everything together. And what really clicked for me when we were talking about this and developing it, I was reading, we had Dr. Ralph Kilman on the show a few months ago. He's the co-creator of the TKI conflict model, but he also wrote this book called Quantum Organization. And in the very beginning, he talks about this concept of building a quantum or an elite organization. Do you build the culture first, or do you build systems first? It's kind of this like thought experiment. And there was a study done where they actually put students into a situation to prove this. And basically they put, this may be a long example, but I think it's really poignant. Good. They had two groups of, say, like 15 people per group. In the first group, it was a hierarchical structure. So like a triangle, one person at the top, and it was a very clear system of communication. In the other group, it was more for the sake of shapes, more like a circle. So the communication wasn't structured. It was just as needed and what was the most effective. And so you have two very different cultures in place. What they did was they took one person from each group and switched them one at a time. And so the person from the circle group went to the triangle group. But what happened was the person from what you could argue is the better system of being the circle, where things are more free flowing, things happen more efficiently, quickly. When they were put into the hierarchical group, they fell in line. They didn't buck the system. They didn't say, hey, maybe we should try this other way, because they were one individual coming into a rigid system. And then the person who was coming from the hierarchical group into the circular group, they fell in line to that culture or into that system. And they swapped one person at a time until both groups were completely swapped. So everybody in the original 15 was in the new, you get it. And the structures and the systems stayed exactly the same. And the point being was that if you don't, you have to change how your organization is functioning systematically before you can ever hope for any kind of culture initiatives to stick. Yeah. And for me, that was the biggest thing. So like you said, we're going to talk about Align later, because I do want to get into the 6 key components of EOS from like a 10,000 foot view. But for us, the Align program is we come in and we implement, Eric comes in and implements EOS, so that when we do the people development and the leadership development and the emotional intelligence and the conflict models, there is a rigid system and structure to support that growth within your organization. And so that is why, example. Yeah, I think we're really nailing the metaphors. I was about to say I think we should stop where we're ahead, because the racetrack and Ralph's example are pretty succinct. But it makes so much sense when you break it down of why do you need to come in and because EOS really blows up your business in a big way. Like there's a lot of
in a good way, in
a really good way. Yeah. But it's so necessary for then whenever we start, and we've seen it, like you were saying, we work with a company out in Colorado Springs where when we've done the leadership development, there is a system for it to actually have impact in their meetings and within their structure of the business.
Yep.
So I don't think we need to go into like all of the details, but I do want to talk about what are the 6 key components of EOS. And then you may have a solid answer, you may not, but I kind of want to know, what would you say is one of the most important or the most impactful of those 6 key components?
Okay. So, well, first 6 key components. So I'll just do a high level kind of cover those. There's a pretty cool graphic that they put out. Maybe you can pop that up on this.
I'll definitely, I'll put it in the show notes.
So EOS is, first and foremost, the focus of EOS is 3 things: vision, traction, and healthy. And they do that through 6 components. So vision, where are we going? Traction, where the rubber meets the road, to where we're actually having accountability and things are moving forward and the entire organization is able to shift and move and go where it needs to go. And healthy, that the teams are actually responding in a psychologically safe way, where there's actual conflict happening, but it's done in a healthy way. We're producing creative ideas and we're tackling real issues and problems. And so the 6 components that help them achieve vision, traction, and healthy, first and foremost is vision. And there's 8 questions underneath vision that they dive into. And it's literally, the first part of it is you're spending 3 days, one of them kind of getting some framework, and they call it focus day, getting some key pieces of that structure set up. And then 2 days on vision building, because you go through these 8 questions and you start diving into it. And the conversation is incredible, what you start to get into, because they're conversations that have needed to happen, but haven't necessarily, either you're not having them and you need to have them and you're not, or you don't know you need to have them, which is in most cases, do we need to have this? And you start having the real conversations with the leadership team, and you get down to who are we from a vision standpoint, everything from, what are our core values and what's our core focus and other things like that. But getting much deeper into having a clear, and even strategy wise, 1-year plan, 3-year plan, 10-year plan, the targets, things like that.
And it's really cool because, we did this in Driven, and hearing how everybody, because if you don't talk about it, everybody kind of has their own individualized way of thinking about the vision. It was like, well, I do agree, but I thought we were doing this. And so having that conversation, like, and this is just the key leaders in the business. This isn't like a company-wide vision discussion. But it really creates some clarity to where at least people can say, we all know we're on the exact same page with what the vision is. And it's not these little bits and pieces that we all have, but don't really fit together somehow. So,
yeah, or it'll highlight where there's lack of clarity and where we've got to dig in and have more conversation. But so first component is vision. Next component is the people, having the right people in the right seats. And there's some incredible tools that EOS offers to really evaluate, do we have the right people? Are they in the right seat? And you're connecting it to your core values, making sure that they align, and you start doing that all the way through the organization. So right there, when you know where you're going and you have all these elements and a strategy towards getting towards the vision, and you have the right people in the right seats and you know it, it changes the whole business. I mean, literally, if you stop at those two. Okay. But EOS is about having all of these components working together. And they talk about you're never going to get 100% of them all perfect because the business is evolving and changing. But if you're constantly working towards having, 80% of these humming, it's pretty amazing.
I think somebody asked you that in a training recently of like, well, I can't, there's no way that I can do all of these like 100% completion. And like you said, that's not the point. It's not to get, 100% completed.
Well, most companies are running like 20, 30%. And they're making money doing 20, 30%.
Yeah. So half any amount of increase.
Wrong people, wrong seats, and they're still somehow pulling it off. We talked to a company recently. We do a 360, which is we go in and actually interview people and really get feedback on the company and what's going on and how to move it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you've gotten to do a bunch of these lately, Connor. But going in, we went into a company and they're like, I got to tell you, I've been here 6 months. I don't know what I do. I don't know my job. And that's in a 40-person company. It's like, what? Scary stuff. So, but anyway, vision, people, next component, we get into data. And so many businesses are being operated on hunches and assumptions or data that's not real. We think it's real data, but then we start digging into it and the numbers are off and they're giving us the improper thing. So it's actually creating a scorecard that dials it in, that gets you the information you need that is accurate. And you're looking at it at a weekly basis. And again, going through this, you know where you're going, you have the right people, and now you're working from the right data and you have a clear, it's like, the lights are on. We can do something. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I know some of you out there listen to this and you're like, yeah, we do that. We've got great people and we know exactly where we're going. You're ahead of the game. I'm just saying, if you really have those nailed down, you're way ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Past the data side, we go to the issues component. The issues are, and every single week we are focused on the issues of the business, solving those issues, and solving them forever. Somebody's assigned to the outcome. There's a to-do checklist. There is clarity around we're getting this issue solved, dates assigned to it, all sorts of things. So we're attacking the issues and making them go away. Most businesses have all these issues just reoccur and we're slapping Band-Aids on them. We're not getting anywhere because everybody's so frantic and working hard. Next gets into process. And, some companies, they go for process, they create a 700-page binder and you got every process highlighted, which are changing and evolving all the time. So the binder is no longer good after 2 months.
Right.
But what EOS does is they go, what are your 3 to 7 core processes that we really got to get nailed down? Let's get them nailed down. And from there, then let's get everybody following these things, followed by the entire organization. When we're consistent with it, people know what to expect. They know what to do, and training people gets a lot easier. We can leverage that. And then the last one is traction, which traction really gets into a wide range of things, but it's where the rubber meets the road. You take all these things, you got vision up at the top. We know where we're going, and we are making this happen through a clear meeting cadence. These are happening consistently. There's accountability that's going on in the organization all the way through, and it's communicated where we're headed. So when you take all these components and you wrap them together and you get 80% strong in each of them, or 80% strong, you're 100 in some and 60 in others, but whatever it is, it works out to be 80. It is unfreaking real. That road, it's leveled out. People know what they're doing. It cascades through the organization. People get excited. You talk to people, and if they've had, in almost every case, when they've had an implementer go in and help them roll this out, they're seeing massive business change and business growth. So now you combine that with, as you're growing, we're developing the leaders of the organization. So these people that are right people, right seats are now having epiphanies on how I can lead better, how I influence others people, how I manage people better, how I work with them better. It's kind of unbelievable. It really is.
So would you say there's any, and you kind of alluded to it with the vision and the people, but is there anyone that you've seen just drive the most impact for businesses as you've been doing this?
Any one component? Is that what you're talking about? Or
Yeah.
So, and EOS talks about it. It's really how the components work together. So it's when you go, is there one that's more important? So you look at them, let's say you know where you're going, you got the right people, but you don't have the right data. Well, you're screwed, right? Because we're making decisions on the wrong information.
Yeah.
So you don't know where you're going. The vision's off, but we got the right people and we got the right data, and the data's saying we don't know where we're going and we're just kind of drifting. Well, that's an issue. There's no strategy to get there.
Yeah.
Or you don't have the right people, or you don't solve the issues, or you don't, especially on process, and you don't have SOPs. And as you grow, it's just everybody's doing it the way they want to do it. And there's all these differences. And the traction part, you're not coming back and looking at all these and making sure we're all on the same page and doing it consistently, was the traction part. So I would say each business has some that they're better at and some that they're worse at. And so the ones that you're pretty poor at is obviously need some attention right away. And the EOS process of, which starts with people doing 90 is what they call it. So it's 90 minutes. Literally, it's an evaluation. You're evaluating, does it fit? If I'm doing the 90, you're evaluating, does my facilitation style fit? I'm not a fluffy guy. I don't come in and go, we'll have some fun, but I'm not going to come in and go, yeah, it's okay that you're not answering these questions. I'm like, no, we're going to get in. We're going to dig. Am I the guy you want? Yeah. Right? You're evaluating us. You're evaluating the process. I'm evaluating you. And it needs to happen. Are we going to get there? Are you a group that's so broken that we introduce a good tool and it's not going to get there? Yeah. So we do a 90. Then from there, we go into focus day, which starts to hit some of the core system parts. We're creating an accountability chart versus an org chart, and has clear roles, and people know what they're doing. And we're evaluating, are they the right people in those seats? Yeah. And more. We're creating what's called rocks. Rocks are, there's a great video of a professor. I think most people have even seen it out there, where he's out there and he's got this jug, and he puts some rocks in it and he goes, is it full? And everybody's like, yeah. And then he puts some pebbles in it. Is it full? Yes. And then some sand and then some water. And eventually, every nook and cranny's in there. Yeah. The concept of rocks are quarterly focus points. They're the rocks in that jug, because all the sand and water and pebbles are going to hit. That's the day-to-day. We got to make sure we get those rocks done, because they're the most important, but often they get overlooked. Yeah. So we go into a quarterly focus on hitting the big things. Then we get into vision building and answering those 8 questions for 2 days. And then we get into the 90-day world, is what they call it, where every 90 days we are meeting and making sure we're on track. There's accountability. And then there's coaching along the way and development that takes place. So it's it's a robust system. And once a year, we get together for 2 days. We do an annual, and we dig in and create the strategy for the next year. Yeah.
So you alluded to this a little bit when you were talking about the 90, and this will be kind of like the last question. We'll land the plane after this. Who is EOS best suited for? If you're talking to a business owner, when would you say is the best time, or how would you say it's right for their business when you're talking to anybody who's thinking about implementing EOS?
So they have, they kind of give the perfect demographics, like 10 to 250 employees is where they say EOS, that's a sweet spot. Obviously you can grow it past that. Yeah. There's definitely bigger businesses that work with that. Smaller you can, but it's definitely possible. It's it's harder, and especially the expense of bringing in an implementer. It's tough at a smaller size. But the sweet spot is what we were talking about before, when a business is hitting a ceiling. Okay, so if you're in full growth mode and it's working and it's humming, great. You're going to hit a ceiling. It's coming.
Yeah.
And I don't wish that upon you, but you can't keep growing at that pace unless you pull back and you start working on the business to solve a lot of these issues.
Yeah.
And so working whenever you feel like that, you can see the ceiling is coming. You can see where you're starting, you're feeling it. You're starting to shake a little because you're in heavy growth mode. That's definitely one. Let's say you've hit the ceiling for the last 5 years. You kind of, you make money, but you're not hitting goals. You're not growing. You're not in the Inc. 5000. Like none of that stuff's happening. You're just kind of going along and you want more, but you don't know how to get there. EOS, beautiful system to do it. Yeah. I'd say the other side, people, it's not for. If you're in a situation where your leadership team doesn't set the direction or can't create its own vision. So let's say really the company is operated by some governing body, a board of directors. It's a very extremely large company and you don't have the autonomy and you're kind of a middle manager in that extremely large company. There's things you can do and parts of EOS that can help, but the full system gets really hard to implement because you have a vision that you want to go after. And then, up above, they go, no, we're not going there. We're going over this way. Well, all the work gets thrown out the window in 2 seconds.
Right.
But if you don't have the autonomy or the ability to do it, not a good system. Second thing is, if you're content, if you're happy where it's at, then EOS is not the system for you because it's going to ripple through the company and it's going to grow it when you do it. Yeah. And I'd say the last one, if you're not willing to look at yourself and want to change. So as a leadership team, if you own a company or you're part of a leadership team and that leadership team is fighting hard to prove why things don't need to change, then you haven't hit a hard enough ceiling yet. And eventually you'll hit the ceiling to a point where it gets frustrating and either people leave, you help them leave, or you shift mindsets. And that's the space where this works. You gotta have a hunger to do things different because it's not easy. Yeah. If it were easy, everybody could do it. There's pain points in making a shift. So
but it's a lot easier than trying to build a road as you're driving on it
by yourself when you don't know how to build a road. I mean, it's so challenging. Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. Well, our hope with this episode was just to give some context, a quick little 35 minute episode to clarify exactly what EOS is, how it works, all of that stuff. As always, though, if you have questions, please just reach directly out to us. You can reach out to Eric at ericdrivenleadership.com or podcast@drivenleadership.com. Next week, we'll chat more through our Align program. Again, Align is really just pairing this EOS system along with all of our other driven products. So, and we're getting really excited about that and how it's already impacting businesses that we've been a part of. So, Eric, thanks for chatting through this.
Thanks, guys.
See you next week, everybody. If you have any comments or questions about what we do here at Driven Leadership or want to get in touch to work with us and allow us to work in your business, you can go to drivenleadership.com, hit the book a call button at the top right, and schedule a call directly with the Driven team. Or you can email us directly at info@drivenleadership.com. Thanks for listening.